Then I think that's
Every time I see it, they say it's. That's why I go.
issues. There is nothing there.
Experience.
I think the only I'll try to do more. How they still exactly, not exactly, of course.
Sorry. Yeah, it's going to be a nice way of people can raise their hand function, it doesn't exist. Anyway, see you later. Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I've noticed that. Yeah, we did that by it.
Yeah,
I'm not.
I just need to take. Oh. No, where it's at.
Yes.
Sorry, that's in.
No, you're absolutely fine, don't worry. Almost inevitable that I'll fall over a cable or other, but and that's not doing it in the kitchen where I fall over the place.
That's not just me.
No,
I was talking to Noreen on the phone and missed the last couple of steps. So I've got a dog and I've got to stay.
if
Flying this brigade.
what you can only, you know, on my wedge you could do it further.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This hearing session is now open. It forms part of the examination of the Northampton Local Plan Part 2, 2011-2029. My name is Philip Lewis, and this is my colleague Mark Sturgis. We are chartered town planners and are the inspector appointed by the Secretary of State to conduct this examination, and we will report to the council in due course. The format of this hearing is that it is a structured and focused discussion that we shall need. However, before we move on to our first matter, I'll spend a few minutes outlining some procedural things, and after that, I would like to have to make a statement. To start with introductions, and firstly introduce Ian Kent, the Programme Officer, who's sitting in the corner of the room there. Ian works for us, he's independent of the council, and is responsible for organising the hearing sessions and the publication of documentation. He's the first point of contact if you need any assistance regarding the examination, and is the conduit to us. It would be useful at this point to invite the council to explain who is here representing you today.
Right, yes, I'm Paul Everon, I'm Planning Policy and Heritage Manager. Northamptonshire Council, Northampton area. To my right is Councillor Rebecca Rees, who is portfolio holder for planning and environment affairs.
Yeah, Amanda Jacobs, Senior Planning Officer for West Northamptonshire Council, Northampton area, work with Paul and Noreen.
Simon Bird QC providing legal support.
John Pearson from Consultants LUC, talking to the sustainability appraisal. My colleague Catherine Sidney will be talking chairs for the HRA.
My name is Tom Burrow. I'm the planning officer for North West Northamptonshire Council. I work for Paul and Noreen.
Morning, Richard Wood, interim head of planning and climate change policy, West Northampton Council.
I'm Noreen Banks, planning policy team leader for West Northamptonshire Council.
And for Homes England,
I'm Mark White, I'm Senior Manager of Planning in Homes England, and I have two other consultants for us today.
Morning, I'm Manuel Owen from Deputy Associates representing Homes England.
Rachel Mullin, Senior Associate Ecologist for the State working on the private place.
and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the hearing. Perhaps some housekeeping points in the usual way. Things that we perhaps haven't been saying very much in the last 18 months or so. We can do these events largely online. Please ensure your electronic devices are switched to silent. And something I've not asked for quite a while now. Council, please tell us about these fire exits and drills. How do you make them safety? You don't need to do that now, do you?
Yes, so in terms of, we're not expecting fire drills today, so it goes off January. The exit route is out to the doors and the new available staircase, and assemble over the road. The former Arctic restaurant still has Arctic in front of it, so there are fire marshals who will get people out safely. In terms of COVID precaution, we ask that everyone wears a mask when they're not seated, so moving around the building. The toilet facilities are, the nearest toilet facilities are actually on the ground floor, opposite the steps to go to the statue. There is a lift as well as to get there. I can't remember, was there anything else you needed to know, sir?
No, I think that's a bit off. If anyone has any questions, they can ask us later on about any specific things, but I think that's very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so as we set out in our guidance note, these hearings are being webcast. So remind participants and observers that they should be aware of that. I'm not sure we have any observers in the room today who aren't otherwise taking part, but really want to Ian just to remind people that we are webcasting the event, because some people may not want to appear on film. Thank you. And just the usual thing with these events, no recording, filming, or photographs, please, without our agreement. It's just because it can cause disturbance, and there may be people again that don't wish their images put on the screen and published. Okay, moving on now to the plan. The plan being examined is Northampton Local Plan Part 2, 2011-2029 submission version, which is this document published on the 2nd of June 2020. Prior to publishing that plan consultation, Council had a consultation on the Northampton Local Plan Part 2 submission draft, May June 2019. They're both Regulation 19 consultations. So, insofar as they relate to matters unchanged between the two versions of the document, we will take into account representation made in both rounds of consultation. We'll make that clear in our view file. Right, I'll say a little bit now about process and our role. It's the role of the inspector to examine whether the submitted plan meets the test of soundness defined by the National Planning Framework and meets all the relevant requirements set out in legislation, including the Planning and Economic Purchase Act of 2004 and Township Planning and Regulations of 2012. This includes a duty to cooperate. These hearings are intended to assist us in that regard. To remind people that the National Planning Policy Framework in paragraph 35 makes it clear that in order to be sound, a local plan should be positively prepared to justify effective and consistent with national policy, and those are tests of soundness which we require for the examination. We will focus on questions of soundness, just really to remind people it's not our role to make a sound plan more sound by improving it if part of it's already sound. Okay, so something that might be desirable but would make it better if it's already sound, we're not going to do that. And just to remind people that the plan is the council's plan. The council prepared it based on its examination. We will make recommendations to it for the council in due course. Now, in submitting the plan, the council considered that it was sound. That is our starting point of examination. So if people are challenging the soundness of the plan, please explain why you consider it to be unsound or indeed legally not compliant, and what changes you would like to make it sound. We have read and will take into account the hearing statements and also the original representations that have been made. So there's no need for those to be repeated during the hearing sessions. Instead, our aim is that discussion moves on from those documents and deals with specific questions that we have or areas that we consider further clarification or explanation is required to help us reach our conclusions on soundness and compliance. So during the hearings, at times we might ask for more general contributions, but please stick to the matter at hand and refrain from commenting on unrelated matters or where you haven't made previous representations. You would have seen so far, if you follow the process, that in order to test the plan, we need to ask questions. This is because it's an inquisitorial process. We've done it from the start of the examination with posing initial questions to the council, and latterly with the matters issues and questions we've posed, people have responded to the statements. This will continue throughout examination. I just really want to remind people that anything we ask should not be taken as us demonstrating a particular disposition. When we come to discuss the matters, we will normally start a particular topic by asking a response to the question we have, and maybe we'll move on to the questions we've set out in the queues after having considered the evidence that's put forward. And we'll normally start with the council, then invite others to comment, and then give the council the final opportunity to respond. If you wish to speak during the session, the normal convention is to put your nameplate on its end. If for some reason we can't see you because it may be blocked by a TV screen or some other documents, just put your hand up and let us know. When you're speaking, please be concise and specific, and in particular, if you want to highlight parts of your statement of relevant documents, it'd be really helpful if you could provide us with the references and relevant page and paragraph numbers. In terms of the examination itself, There are a number of possible outcomes. Firstly, the submitted plan is sound. Secondly, the submitted plan is not sound but could be made sound by changes, maybe modifications if necessary. There may be some additional work to do that. And finally, the submitted plan is not sound, could not be made sound by changes, in which case we would recommend that it be withdrawn. Point of really, perhaps stating the obvious, but we're examining the plan, not what isn't in it. We're aware that a number of alternative development sites have been put forward in the statements, which are generally known as the mission sites. We're not going to be considering the merits of these because they do not qualify the plan forward, and it will be unfair to do so to people. The plan is a party plan. The adopted joint course strategy sets out the strategic policy for the area. The joint course strategy is not before us, and in line with the Oxford residential judgment, it is not for us to revisit these policies except where the party plan seeks to replace them. We shall be testing the science of housing employment and mixed-use allocations proposed in the plan in the process by which they've been selected. If following the hearings, we would conclude that the plan is unsound, say in respect to its allocation for housing sites, then it would be the council to consider whether to bring forward alternatives to rectify any shortcomings. If that were to happen, the council would need to undertake further consultation on any alternative sites proposed to ensure that interested parties and others who may not have, well, obviously hadn't had the chance to comment before, would have the chance to comment. The council has confirmed to us that it wishes us to recommend any modifications as may be necessary to ensure people rights soundness, and has suggested a number of main modifications for some schedule that have been submitted. We will be looking at these through the course of the hearings. What we would ask the council to do is keep a running record of actions, possible changes, possible main modifications that arise during the course of the hearings. We will review those at a convenient time, probably at the end of each week when we sit. Because I know it's difficult to actually put them all together and prepare the next day, etc. So we'll make sure we have time to do that. As people are aware, any proposed main modifications would need to be subject to consultation and the sustainability appraisal and regulation and assessment revised accordingly. There are a number of changes that could be made to the plan that fall outside the scope of this examination. They're called additional modifications, and those are things that don't materially affect the understanding of the policies in effect. So there are things that include things such as typos and factual errors, and any additional modifications are made by the council, subject to consultation, and published alongside the main modifications, but separate from them, in due course. Just to remind people that the policies map is not defined in legislation as a development plan document, so we have no powers to recommend changes to it. However, there may be changes arising to the policy map that come out as a result of main modifications due to because this is the interstate representation of the application of the policies. So these such changes would need to be published separately alongside the main modifications consultation. In terms of the examination, it started when the plan was submitted and will end when we provide our report to the council. We will endeavour at the end of the hearing sessions to indicate the likely timescale for the next phase of the examination. In any event, we would do that through an initial guidance letter. We would issue a supplement after the hearings. Okay, moving on now to documents. You can see we've issued our main issues and questions on our examination guidance notes. We will work on the basis that people have read those. You will also be aware that we receive hearing statements from the council and other participants and they're published on the website. In terms of additional documentation, the procedure guide for local plan examination sets out once plans are submitted for examination, no additional written material shall be submitted by the council or any other party that has been affected by the inspector. This is to ensure fairness to all participants. So we have people to refrain from submitting other documents. There will be some documents that are going to be of significance that we would want to take into account. So then people feel with something that needs to be submitted them by the program officer, and we will see whether it's something but our main consideration is fairness to others. There are defined stages of preparation of local plan where we provide people opportunities to comment on information, and this is one of them other than what we hear in the hearings. You will have seen we've issued agendas setting up matters to be discussed in the sessions, and we'll do our best to follow these. As I said earlier on, some of the questions have been answered already by statements, so we won't need to repeat questions we posed. We will indicate that at the appropriate time. Please note, coming to the end of my opening announcements, I thought it'd be useful just to explain something about local plan hearings. Local plan hearings are relatively frequent events compared to local planning events, such as public inquiries and appeal hearings, etc. And people, unless you work in this field, you may be unfamiliar with them. So it's useful, I think, to maybe set out a few points about them. Firstly, these hearings, important as they are really part of our examination. As I said just now, the examination has been underway for some time. I'm not able to resubmit up what we can. We've read written submissions, and written submissions carry the same weight as anything we do in the sessions. And local plan hearings have a particular purpose and format, which is quite unlike other planning procedures. They're concerned with soundness of the plan and legal compliance. It's also unusual to force the plan to take part. So local plan hearings are inquisitorial. They relate to issues and questions we pose about which we need further clarification in our examination. We don't need to hear answers to questions we've not posed, and there's no opportunity for general comments. Finally, during the hearings, contributions are only made by those around the table. Again, we haven't got a public gallery here at the moment. And just really encourage people not to repeat comments. But that's the end of my comments, other than just to draw people's attention to the fact that the Environment Act 2021 passed into law last week. We will deal with any matters that arise from that during the course of the examination. And at this point, I have nothing in particular or no more to say on it. We will see what may or may not unfold in the coming months on that one. We just noted that there may be stuff coming out from the government in that regard. But anything else that comes up, we'll deal with it when it happens. So does anyone have any questions on the procedure? No, thank you. Okay, so I'll invite Councillor Williams to provide Councillor Lakeman.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And being mindful of what you said about not repeating, I should actually strike out a paragraph where I was largely explained this. So, on behalf of the council, I would like to welcome you both and all those attending the examination. After many months of hard work, it's pleasing that we've now reached the hearing part of the examination. This is the part you plan. I've heard from you details about that, but what I will emphasise is that this plan seeks to complement our Regional Plan's Joint Core Strategy by supporting its delivery and implementation and not to duplicate its policies. Whilst our Joint Core Strategy is being reviewed and the preparation of the spatial plan is underway, it remains at a very early stage. But by way of an update, I'll let you know that the Council has, since we submitted our response initial letter, we have put an options paper out to consultation, and that consultation commences on the 6th of December. So the plan is consistent with the policies of the Joint Core Strategy, saying that it includes one policy, which is Policy 16, which is intended to supersede a policy in the Joint Core Strategy, which is Policy H6, to reflect a revised government guidance relating to gypsies and travellers. The plan is also consistent with the Council's corporate plan from 21 to 25, which has a vision to make West Northamptonshire a great place to live, work, visit and thrive. It seeks to achieve this vision through the delivery of 6 key priorities, including thriving towns, economic development and a green and clean area for us to live in. The plan will form part of a suite of plans, a development plan consisting of the Joint Core Strategy and this plan, and when adopted together with 3 made neighbourhood plans, potentially increasing to 4 with an examination expected in December. So a number of the plan's policies will replace the currently saved policies of the Northampton Local Plan 1997 and the policies of the Northampton Central Area Action Plan 2013. Taken together, the Joint Core Strategy, the plan and the neighbourhood plans will provide a more streamlined and up-to-date planning policy framework to assist the delivery of sustainable development across the town. Throughout the preparation of the plan by Northampton Borough Council, which as you all know was abolished earlier this year, the Borough Council worked closely with its neighbours, particularly those in West Northamptonshire, with whom it met and worked regularly and effectively in a variety of forums. The Council has undertaken several stages of consultation, each one of which has helped to shape the plan. As indicated in response to matter 1, the consultation has been undertaken in accordance with the regulations, Council statement of community involvement, and the consultation and engagement strategy. It has also followed the plan production process and the adopted local development scheme. Careful consideration of the comments raised at both proposed submission stages has led to some main and additional modifications being identified. In addition, in response to the inspector's questions, some further main and additional modifications have been identified. I reference here exam 2 and exam 2A. The Council has asked the inspectors to consider these main modifications and any other proposed through the Council's matter statements, through the examination hearings, where they would ensure the soundness of the plan. Whilst we acknowledge the additional modifications are matters for the Council to deal with, we would ask the inspectors to look at these to determine if any of them ought to be main modifications. We consider the plan we have submitted to be sound, as being prepared in accordance with the relevant planning legislation, regulations and national planning policy and practice guidance. The plan has been informed and shaped by sustainability appraisal to ensure it promotes sustainable development and by habitat regulation assessment. A robust and proportionate evidence base also informs that. At the time the plan was submitted to examination, the planning authority from Northampton was Northampton Borough Council. On April 1st this year, that council and 3 other councils were abolished and West Northamptonshire Council was formed. The plan still bears the name of the former borough and refers, for example, to the former county council as the highway authority. Subject to the outcome of your report, the plan will be adopted by the West Northamptonshire Council and all references to the former councils will be updated in the final version of the plan. So, this plan was prepared by a team of officers whose details are set out in Appendix A. And I'd like to thank them because I know it's been a lot of very hard work. And members of the team will be variously attending the sessions over the next 2 session weeks. The Council will also be supported by Simon Burke QC, so far, thank you, who will be present at all hearing sessions and specialist consultants for a small number of the sessions. We are all looking forward to assisting you during the course of the examination. So to conclude, the Council considers that the plan provides a sound and positive set of policies to complement those in the joint core strategy and is consistent with the 2021 National Planning Policy. We welcome the examination.
Thank you. Just to respond to your point about additional modifications, yes, we are very happy to look at them. It's something that I can put as a course through other examinations because the last thing I want is to not be any modification to be missed out. Obviously, the additional modifications will take for what that may cause the plan in due course. We really need to make sure that as a plan progresses, we get it as correct as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, we can now move on to matter 1. The programme will be considered until 1 o'clock in the agenda. What we will do is take a bit more debate and appropriate points. Probably around back 11 o'clock, but see how we go. But we will be finished, I think, by 1 o'clock. We will have to do something. So, everyone is sitting. Please, Mr. We'll move on to first question, introduce the duty to cooperate. As some of you are aware, the duty to cooperate will run from the commencement of work on the plan for appointed submission of determination. This has since in the course of time of the US Council. We're just moving on a little bit from the question we posed. Given that the plan of the property plan and given its scope set out in the plan in the what if any strategic planning matters which require the council to engage constructively, actively and on an ongoing basis to maximise the effectiveness of the local cooperation.
So, it's, I think we statement of my duty to cooperate, so which is we certainly did commissioning of joint evidence across the authority in former West Northamptonshire area. So, for example, market evidence, other areas of work as well. There were statements on the ground between the constituent various factors, including matters such as housing numbers and the related and so on. Those were a lot of grounded working on that. Transport issues as well. Steering group, which do with the Northampton growth management. The 5 in relation to developments around the Northampton related development area. So there were a number of issues along those lines that were discussed.
Okay, so it's some sort of the issue we all need to look at then in our report. I've got a note to the kitchen trailer. Yeah, obviously, because that's something that we bring to this plan. And did you treat the habitat regulations issues with the SPA as a matter of preparation for plan? Or we did the part 2 plan, it's
The habitat regulations were treated on a borough basis. But yeah, gypsy cover is done between the 3 authorities.
just really trying to tease out because we have a situation here where the plans were prepared for borough.
Yes.
And some of the duty to cooperate parties are now part of the said council. So it's an interesting situation because I think about strategic issues, because if you didn't plan now, you'd be looking beyond the boundaries of West Northamptonshire. I appreciate that. Yeah, but that's fine, it's okay. And we have your statement in respect of the specific comments. But it might be helpful actually if you could remind us of what have been the key actions.
Okay. So in terms of the key outcomes, I suppose, yes, we talked about the agreements between the 3 or 4 authorities. There was agreement with the transport part of Northamptonshire County Council about the need for the traffic modelling runs, indicating minor infrastructure upgrades and also some more significant upgrades needed to mitigate the traffic impact of the new proposed plan. There was complete agreement with Anglian Water on changes proposed there, particularly relating to matters such as water stress and the need for the optional 10 litres per person per day standard. There was agreement between Natural England, the Environment Agency, and Anglian Water ourselves in relation to water supply and water quality. There was no need for inclusion of policy for the project level HRA. We agreed with Natural England wording on policies to address the issue of recreational impacts of new developments on the Upton Valley Gulfits, special protection area around our site. And we also had the outcome of our discussions with Historic England on matters to do with the railway station site, the Gulfgate site, and other sites around the borough. So those are some of the principles outcome, I think.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments about what we want? Okay, let's move on to sustainability appraisal. Thank you to the panel for your response statement. It was the helpful. It would just provide an overview on the approach taken to the sustainability appraisal. And the specific question we have, we note that over 500 sites were identified through investigation, leading to 120 being selected for reasonable alternatives. Where are the reasons set out for rejecting the site as being reasonable alternatives? Our question is the SA document itself clear as to where that will happen?
Can I pass you over to Mr. Pearson to?
Thank you, yes. So the process follows to identify and then appraise the reasonable alternative sites set out in the chapter 2 of the sustainability appraisal report, which is document 4. And in chapter 2 methodology, there is a subtitle on page 10 called Initial Sifting, paragraph 2.33. That's where the council's process for moving from their long list of sites to their short list of sites is summarised. And the sorts of criteria that they applied were whether the sites were already under construction, they were wholly within the designated, nationally designated areas, and factors like that. So that's the description of that. And then the description of the reasons for allocating or not the reasonable alternative sites are provided in the appendix to the SA report, which is a 7-volume appendices, document 7. And Appendix D is the reasons for allocating or not the reasonable alternative sites.
Okay, so we've seen where the reasonable alternatives are assessed. Where is the document, the evidence base that explains why the sites were discarded as being reasonable alternatives? Was that done through the additional process, or?
It was done through the through the process of assessing the sites as through the initial sifting of sites. And my colleague Noreen Banks knows a little more.
I haven't got a Toblerone on me.
Oh, really?
But yes, once we received the information on reasonable alternatives, we then did a proper land availability assessment for each of those sites, and we discounted the sites that we considered unavailable, for example, for reasons such as they were still operational, or we did not have evidence of the operation ceasing, or we did not have sufficient information on land ownership, for example. So we then discounted further sites for those reasons.
Did that happen through the SMART process then?
Yeah.
Did that fed into the PSA?
Yes. So every time we updated the information or we've got new information, we sent it back to LUC to be reassessed.
Yeah. I think it would be helpful if there can be reference to the estate documents to how that happened.
So yes, there is reference to paragraphs 233 and 234 in sub 4 do provide the outline reason. It may be that those need to be expanded just to set out that more clearly. The council's position is that under the regulations, it has to give an outline of the reason, only an outline of the reason, and it's done that, but we're happy to consider turning a reference to the SAMR process in that.
Thank you. Any other points on the table which may put the essay consensus? Okay, so let's move on to the habitat regulation assessment habitat site. I think we posed a number of questions on our queues and thank you for your very significant things. I think Stuart and I appreciate the policy position in respect of the other. I don't want to call you green buddy or be a net and everything.
Net, he said.
The local ways is. So, we noticed that the position is, you could say, well, working program. I think that the work we would take on that. Naturally, England continue to raise some concerns about the findings of the HRA and the evidence behind the conclusions. And I think that concerns stem from the evidence that actually supports the conclusions. The HRA concludes no adverse effects on the integrity of the underlying SPA. The Natural England statement sets out the support conclusion at this stage and maintains position that there are some outstanding issues taking the evidence base and report using the building evidence effects. Now, we know that Natural England is down to working with the council to update and address the evidence gaps. So it would be useful to talk around a couple of those issues today to see where we are and to see how things are progressing. And then how we can fit that into the planning examination process. First issue I think we would identify is that of recreational disturbance, and it's identified as various documents of significant threats to the integrity of the SPA. That's disputed anywhere. We note to the comment by Natural England, we declined the design golden plover numbers in the SPA, according to the statement. And at this point in time, we know to perhaps ignore the Natural England's concern that we haven't reached the point where there's robust and effective mitigation measures for us to look at in detail at the moment, but we appreciate they're being prepared. And so, as things stand at the moment, we're unlikely to be able to conclude that such mitigation measures can be sufficiently secure and likely to be put into place at some point in the future, because we haven't reached that point yet. Just really trying to explain that how we see it. Mr. Sturgis, do you have any other take on it, please?
Not really. It's really about when the mitigation strategy will be adopted and the additional survey work. The Natural England made a point that survey work on recreation disturbance dates from 2012. So therefore that could be up to date, bearing in mind the development that might have taken place since then. So we want to explore that. And then the other point around when the time scale, I suppose, of producing mitigation strategy, because that seems to me to be, seems to us to be expertise whether Natural England's even about whether the evidence supports conclusions really stand.
I think it would be useful at this stage to explain perhaps where things have got to, because I think we may have even moved on when the statements were issued, and also perhaps to just respond to the point about the survey work that underpins the footprint technology work. I think it was 2013. It's super interesting to know exactly what is visible at the moment for the preparation of the SPP, but maybe if you can explain where they are and what you think the likely trajectory is, and what's the other things.
Yes, if I can hand you over to Amanda Jacobs, he's got details on these.
Yeah. So we've signed a statement of common ground with Natural England, which is exam 8, and that goes into detail about the changes of the policies. Policy 29, you want to split that into 2 policies. but more importantly, this discussion in policy 30. They did require us to commit to adopting a mitigation strategy by the time the local plan part 2 was adopted. We've now gone to Cabinet with a draft mitigation strategy, and we are aiming to out consultation on the 13th of December to the 7th of February, with an aim to get that adopted by April next year, so 2022. Natural England have been a part of the steering group with regards to the mitigation strategy. The sort of baseline numbers are based on the Footprint Ecology Visitor Access Study, which was published in 2014, and the survey is dated from 2012-2013. We are using that baseline for this mitigation strategy. It does recommend mitigation measures in there that we consider are still relevant and suitable for a mitigation strategy for the Unit 1 of the SPA, which sits within West Northamptonshire. Those measures that were identified in the Footprint Ecology Study are currently being used in the mitigation strategy within Northamptonshire for the Units 2 to 8 of the Upland Valley Rubber Pits SPA. They are being used successfully. I understand that around the country, so Thames Basin Heath, New Forest, Solent are using similar measures, and I understand they have been used successfully. So we've got no reason to doubt that those measures, which are contained, which are recommended within the Footprint Ecology Study, there's no reason to doubt that they wouldn't work for Unit 1. So we're pretty confident about that. As a parallel to this, we have a combined group. So West Northamptonshire is joining together with North Northamptonshire to refresh the data, because we accept it's simply out of date now, albeit the recommendations are fit for purpose in terms of the measures that are needed. So work is starting, some overwintering bird surveys for the entire SPA starting now, and there will be further sort of visitor recreation impact surveys undertaken over the next couple of years to inform Upland Valley Gravel Pits wide mitigation strategy that will deal with the SPA in its entirety. So we won't have a Unit 1 and a Unit 2 to 8. So we're producing mitigation strategy. It will fill that gap, albeit it will be based on slightly out-of-date data, but we're confident that the measures recommended, which are in use elsewhere, successfully will work for Unit 1 in Northampton, and that includes things like wardening, some fencing. Like I say, we've had steering group discussions with Natural England, the Wildlife Trust, local landowners, the Environment Agency, because Unit 1 of the SPA is concerned flood defence infrastructure. So we've got all the relevant people around the table, and we'll be moving into the working group phase once we get out to consultation in a few weeks to discuss how we get the project list and the project management moving forward and ready to go once we've got that adopted in April.
So in terms of the document that preparation will go out to consultation shortly, then have you revisited the contribution dwelling in that?
Yes.
So is it the same figure as what was due in the viability assessment?
It's slightly higher, and we have looked at the viability assessment, and the viability assessment goes into lower and higher value zones, and it looks at typologies, greenfield, brownfield. In all scenarios, they can make a contribution by section 106. So the uplift in the cost per unit for the SCAN, strategic access management and monitoring, can be absorbed in section 106 payments.
So just make a note, depending on where we get on that, to check the viability assessment to see if that needs to be tweaked in any way. It doesn't sound like it would need a significant change given the level of confusion anyway. It's not going to have a significant outcome. It's something that we need to do, particularly in areas where viability will be.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of The process of the preparation, so you're aiming to get inspected April.
Yes.
So we would need to think about the ongoing process and examination and how that would fit in with any main modifications should we get to that point. Yet, ideally, I think that would be in place prior to main modifications.
Yeah.
Because then we can look at that and take a view on legal compliance, etc. in that regard, with the comfort that the FPD is in place, the benefit of comments from natural and
Yeah.
Okay, there's also the question of provision of sign in relation to policy 41. I suggest we discuss that when we discuss policy 41. That's that could be a specific one about policy and something to discuss this afternoon. Better to leave it then and do all this in the round. Okay, the other question is that around functioning land. Naturally, we provides that currently band of functioning land adverts into the landscape streets the residents need to go a collective approach. I understand that there have been some winter bird surveys last year in the place for this season. When you're anticipating that those will be complete winter season, that will be
Can I answer that one? So the winter and bird survey is the second year of surveys at the Great Home sites have commenced in September, and they're due to run until March next year. And the first year survey was National Inlands, and so the methodology of the surveys is
when you anticipate that the survey findings will be written up and
that should be, yeah.
what would be your view really, on the clarity for the need survey? So it's seen requirement to do the surveys, but also records elsewhere to 3 years of surveys. So what would you agree with Natural England in respect to what you're doing?
So we carried out 1 year's worth of surveys last year and submitted the report as part of, to Natural England as part of their discretionary advice surveys. And they have commented that an additional year's worth of surveys is required. So I think, in essence, the second year's worth of surveys, once the results are known, will probably include whether a third year is therefore required and whether conclusions can be drawn from that second year's worth of surveys. But we're engaging with Natural England through the discretionary advice service as part of that. So we will talk to them again in April through the second year's of service.
Thank you. So it looks like the functioning land issue is coming together there with the preparation of the SPVs. Next year then.
Yeah, it's been dealt with by the combined group for the mitigation strategy, the SPA also. They're starting surveys, but they're starting now. So
yeah. So the surveys that have been done across the whole of the SPA, those. So is that going to be on a 3-year basis? Is that where we've got 3 years for?
yes, that's what Natural England mentioned for the SPA wide basis.
Okay. Assuming then that was feed into the strategic plan for this natural area and the neighbouring areas too.
Yes.
Okay, again, the other questions about site-specific, obviously, legal land we're talking about. But, do you have any other points about that?
No, not on site specific, but surely a discussion what's to your tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that's been useful. That's given us a good picture as to the trajectory for the work going forward. Let's have a discussion of the time and think about. Are there any other points anyone would like to make, or just would you let us know at this point in time in relation to the HRA side of it? Because of course, when the survey work is complete, and when the SPDs in place, the HRA document will need to be revisited, probably at the time that it could be revisited to the any main occupation.
So, just a couple of very brief points, noting that the meeting will follow. I think, first of all, just alongside the SPD, the point you made in the emerging SPD, that the same process is separate, wouldn't engage with management on that process. We have also engaged on the functionally linked land. I think just to echo the point about understanding what the mitigation would be with its driving test, and certainly from our perspective, we have a clear understanding of what may be required of us, and that, as we've seen in the discussion about the forest, something that we're engaged on already. So certainly we share the council's confidence about understanding where things will we can deal with the details.
But we'll be tomorrow. We'll spend time discussing potential policy options, depending on when we get to in terms of the evidence base. Residential planning.
Yeah, it's sort of answers that are mentioned in your written statement around what could be the proposed implications, the practicality of different there, but it's really impact.
Okay, any points on?
Just on the HRA issue, the council takes a view with policy 30 in the plan. The plan will comply with the habitat population person we were adopted today. So the issue is more effectiveness in terms of the applications in the plan. They're not the effectiveness of mitigation, which again, council is satisfied can be put in place, and it's now working through the detail. You do have to keep in mind the distinction between what the habitat regulations require, and you shall not give effect to the plan unless you have no adverse effect of policy that it does, and obviously your broader consideration of standards or gender.
Okay, so we'll move on to the development team. We'll have fairly recently updated the development team. Just really make the point that we have to keep an eye on that, because the time horizon is out a bit. So that's something that is ongoing by I think it's inevitable that after a huge change and may not move as quickly as first plan, but sometimes move more quickly. So we'll keep an eye on that. Okay. It's safe to move on to community involvement. It's got much speed. We've heard a little bit from the councillor really earlier about the approach to community involvement, but I think it would be useful just to provide an explanation, maybe for people when they were watching on YouTube, of the approach the council has taken to community involvement with the planning process.
Okay, so yes. Yes, the council statement of community involvement, the Northampton Council statement of community involvement was adopted in 2017. adopted in 2018. We took, so since it was adopted in 2017, we've engaged us in the following ways. We had the site consultation, which included press releases, social media communications, immediately before the consultation started. All consultation documents were made available in one-stop shop in the Guildhall. Members of staff were able to answer questions and advise. Documents were deposited in public libraries and on the website. Letters and emails explaining the consultation and providing details how to respond sent to the specific consultation body, general consultation bodies, authorities, site bodies, and other organisations. Hard copies of the consultation documents were made available at parish council offices, other community offices, and there were briefings of borough and parish councillors, neighbourhood forums, and a notice was placed in the local newspaper. Round one consultation on the regulation 19 stage on the plan was carried out in the same way, exactly the same format. But additionally, there were two staffed drop-in sessions held here at the Guildhall, one at sort of afternoon, evening, one on Saturday. And then the issue with consultation for the round book, we had press releases, consultation documents were all made available for review and download. The council's website, and we did all the regulatory in terms of making sure that the letters and emails explaining the consultation were sent to the consultation body, general consultation body, and authorities, prescribed bodies, organisations and individuals. I think we hoped that we were going to be able to deposit documents at other places as well, but it proved that the parish council weren't keen on that deal. We had virtual consultation workshops with borough councillors, parish councillors, neighbourhood forums, and so on. So the last round.
Okay. Were there any requests for you to send hard copy documents out, or were people generally happy?
I think we ended up sending one out. Yes. Yeah. We actually sent that free of charge because I thought actually people should see what we're coming and have a look at it.
Thank you. In terms of climate change, especially focused, is the other policy of the plan designed fuel application of an application of climate change according to section 19.8 of the Act. Of course, this market plan needs to be read with the strategic in any event, but it would be helpful if you could explain how the market plan moves on at that level from what's about.
Okay. Yes, sir. It was the plan's policy, the frame within a vision. The vision of the document actually talks about new development in Northampton responding directly to the challenge of climate change. So that the borough can be a leading example of low environmental impact, gains made wherever possible. And that development should be resilient to the impacts of climate change, and wherever possible, adverse impacts can be mitigated. And that's sort of followed through in the objective 12 of the plan, which is about climate change. It's fair to say that certainly in policies talk about mitigating climate change in those objective 12 climate change provisions translate directly into policy 3, which includes provisions to incorporate passive denial into in new developments, and there's some sort of backing up of that and supporting text of that policy on the green routes to was. Policy 5, we talk about the need for sustainability statement to be submitted with planning applications for major development, setting out an approach to how development actually seeks to adapt to climate change and to achieve carbon reduction. This policy 5 also promotes sufficient energy efficiency and the use of renewable energy resources. And it also requires water efficiency measures to be incorporated into new developments. There's also policy 27, which seeks to ensure that new developments protect, manage, maintain, and connect existing green infrastructure assets. Clearly, ecosystem services are very important, increasingly important as we sort of face climate change. And that is because of their contribution to climate change adaptation and so on. So those, I think, are the principal areas that it's kind of thinking about.
Thank you, that's helpful. All agree with moving on to talking about policies. It'd be helpful, I think, if you could again explain how the council that regard to create the Quality Act based on those relevant characteristic, and we have just note we have a section on policy.
Okay, yeah, so the quality impact assessment was sub 14, and it was policies were looked at in detail, and it found that there were no negative impacts on any of the objective characteristics set out in the Equality Act. And on that basis, we can see beyond the screening stage. It concluded that the plan seeks to deliver benefits for all sectors of the community, including their housing, leisure, and development needs. In terms of, I suppose, other issues that are relevant to this policy 14 on type of mix of housing, seeking to benefit disabled people and older people because it supports schemes that provide specialist accommodation, promotes independent living, and it stipulates that such developments meet the specialised nature and care requirements for prospective occupiers. And also because it seeks to deliver dwellings capable of meeting occupants' changing circumstances. So again, that's very much focused on the people and disabled people. I'm encouraging walking, cycling, public transport. Obviously, the plan are beneficial to people who, because of their age, a disability, for example, they can't have a driving licence, be better able to travel independently. It's also a public health implication there because it's it's an issue that particularly less active lifestyles tend to be more an issue for people who are less well off. And there is a policy on childcare provision, 25, which seeks to ensure that new childcare provision is managed in such a way that there is sufficient high quality flexible childcare that's affordable and meets the needs of parents and carers. So that enables anyone looking after children, mothers, fathers, guardians, to be able to access employment. So I think for those reasons, the county should have due regard to those three aims set out in section 1.
Around the room, completion. Thought? Those questions about the policies, not cues. As you do all clarification there. The suggested legal occupation for the same, of course. But then it's B, I noted, doesn't include the policy,
That time, included in one of the main modifications.
very well given as an
But I think it's at application, main modification 59. And yes, so we've set out that it essentially the policy 16 replaced policy H6 of the joint core strategy.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to come to session at the party plan. So you confirmed to us in response to any questions that the only plan policy plan decisions in place in the strategy is policy 860 future house cover shape and book. As I said, we'll talk about that time. Really want to be clear about the plan. We'll come, no doubt, come back to that as we saw the discussion about later on that trajectory, etc. Just to confirm that, so policy 860, the only policy that's been exceeded.
Yes, sir.
Not aiming to do anything else. And the scope of the plan is as defined in LBS to set out specific allocations to the plan for including residential employment uses, food quantities against the planning application of development and use of land building. So the identification phase and implementation of local infrastructure sites gives an example of policies protect value results, senses, historic conservation, open space, etc. And then things will be replaced to be central plan.
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll have some questions about housing trajectory, tip 7, what council tends to do that. It will be sort of in the context of purpose of the plan, I think. We'll come back to that later on. Also been some questions raised. Here a statement about employment policies and how they relate to the joint core strategy. And again, we will talk about those when we come to development policies. It would be helpful if the council would be in a position just to explain context and how we've got points, how we're taking the employment figures in the joint core strategy and translating them to land in a land plan. Yeah, because it's an interesting approach, at least in the political strategy. So we'll no doubt have some about that. Does anyone around the room have any questions about the content plan and its consistency with the core strategy? What's the right to?
Okay, well, essentially the plan is consistent with the core strategy. It plans for the same time period, from 2011 to 2029. It's planning on the basis of the joint core strategy housing targets for Northampton, which is making that we 70 additional dwellings. strategic policies, say, we've just discussed, policy 16, replacing policy 06, all the strategic policies other than those include those relating to the overall delivery of housing. And the allocation of sustainable urban extensions, they're not changed by the plan. All of the plan's policies help to deliver the policies set out in the joint core strategy, and we've made note of that of each policy, and they build upon them to achieve specific local objectives, I suppose. So, I mean, in the written statement, you'll be aware I've cited an example of a policy on big takeaways, which is there to, there's been a sort of causal relationship between socio-economic group and density of those facilities, and it helps to achieve the core strategy objective of addressing issues of deprivation specifically. So yes, the view is that yes, the is clearly consistent with the strategy, and it's within that framework. It's been
In terms of the core strategy itself, my understanding correct that the board of councils put together a review that document, sometimes to whether it's policy around debts.
It is.
And that led to the 86 issue. The other policies are considered to be not out of date. Broadly, maybe some that maybe
broadly the case. I mean, I think most of the policies were found to be still sound. Yes, the H6 policy. I mean, we can go into the reason why. The reason essentially to do with the change in the definition of travellers planning definition, which is why I'm not wishing to stray into the next matter, but it gets into the issue of the figures that are in the H6 don't apply anymore for that reason, essentially.
It's just useful so we can understand what has been done in terms of the joint policies. And they're considered in terms of whether they're out of date or not. The process of reviewing the policy. So, around the room, if any further issues, Sturgis, anything? No. We've actually reached the end of questions we have on that one. Apologies, but in some ways it's a fairly prompt process, but it's only allowed a time based on who you expect to turn up. We have a relatively small number of participants. I'm sure Mr. Bird, like me, has spent time spending the whole day discussing a set of questions as far as that. Maybe more finish it. Yes. So, apologies to those that stayed for the rest of the day. We now have a gap of the day. The next session is scheduled to start at 2 o'clock, and we start again. But I think it's been useful for us. We've got information we need to the client's questions, and it's a useful frame for us for the other sessions. Examination. But before we adjourn until this afternoon, anyone already confirming those which they've mentioned, what I mentioned earlier, you tend to do because you never know if you've got minds, which I said it's like that, but no. Okay. That's the case, then we will adjourn early on board. Maybe that's an advantage, and we will resume at 2 o'clock. Maybe I think we'll automatically see. That would be a good reason to say.